Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm your host, Philip Board, my co-host,
Mia Medina.
Thanks for joining. So today we thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the, I'm not going to call them horror stories, but some things that we've experienced associated with accounts not being registered properly and maybe out of date documents. Is there anyone that's top of mind for you that we should go over first?
Let's say...
You can't say their names, just tell me.
No. When someone forgets to update their beneficiaries and then they pass away.
Oh, yeah, we had that one not too long ago. So we had a client, long-term client, and while we did a really good job of keeping up her beneficiaries, she did not update her bank account. And when she opened her bank account 25 years prior, she had put a designation on there called TOD, transfer on death. So it's basically a beneficiary arrangement. And at the time, she chose a friend that she lost contact with. And lo and behold, she passed away, and she was in her 70s. She passed away, and the family comes to us and says, okay, we're here to get the client's money. And we go, well, she just transferred a substantial amount of the money into her bank account because she asked it to pay for her care. And then it turns out that money went directly to this friend. The other thing that happened with that was that she chose a new friend to be the executor of her estate. And the new friend, while a good friend while she was living, was an awful trustee. And it took us 2 years to get that trustee to resign because she didn't understand terminology. She was a wonderful lady, immigrant, didn't grow up with American estate planning, taxation, things like that, and was essentially a terrible, terrible trustee, even though she was a great friend. So we ended up orchestrating we asked her to resign, and we ended up having to get some attorneys involved to write her letter saying, no, she wouldn't be liable for the person that passed away's back taxes. So that was a train wreck. Choosing the right trustee for your trust, and also updating your beneficiaries on every account. So that's a good one. You know what comes to mind? The lady with the pen. So we took over this. So we took over this financial advisor's practice because his health had failed significantly. And so we're taking over his clients. And I'm meeting with this gentleman and his wife. And the gentleman looked all of 80 years old. But he was pretty sharp because he came in, he had his Apple iWatch on, and he had his iPad, and he was like tech savvy and retired engineer. And he could tell you what day of the week he'd receive a dividend. I don't care what it is. He had it tracked perfectly. And his wife, looking much, much younger, came in, very attractive lady. And so they decide to move their accounts over. And I'm like, gave the paperwork to the husband, and he signed it, no problem. And then I gave it to the wife, and I said, oh, could you sign here, please? And I hand her the pen, and she signs it. She's like, oh, this is a really nice pen. Whose pen is this? I'm like, oh, you're welcome to have it. We give our clients pens. Turn the page. Could you sign here, please? She signs, and she says, this is a really nice pen. Whose pen is it? Like, you can have it. It's for you. Oh, next page. Signs it. Whose pen is this? Or a really nice pen. Again, the same thing over and I look at the husband, I'm like, you have power of attorney over her, right? And he goes, no, she'll do anything I ask her to. And I looked at him, I said, you know what, that's all fine and dandy, assuming she passes away first. If you go first, she's in charge of all your money and is in charge of everything. Now, a lot of people will go, oh, let's get a conservatorship. Trust me, you don't want a conservatorship. It gets judges and lawyers involved where you don't need them. So we sent them out to an estate planning attorney, a specialist, And after several months, she had a lucid day and was able to sign documents which immediately invoked the power of attorney for the husband. He called in on Friday and said, yep, we'd like to come in on Thursday and we'll re-register all our accounts in the name of the trust. I said, fantastic. See you then. Well, I didn't. Rachel did. Monday, we get a phone call from their son, which is never a good phone call. And that he said, oh my gosh, it's a mess. My dad passed away unexpectedly. And the son was freaked out because who's in charge of mom, what have you. And we were able to tell him, don't worry about anything. We've got it all covered. All we need is a death certificate. Could you bring it to us as soon as you get it? Which he did. What he didn't know was that he was successor power of attorney over his mom. We're able to use that power of attorney with the son's signature to finish funding the trust on mom's behalf. So long story short, we were able to get the trust done and we saved the family a whole lot of hassle and trouble. So that was one of those, wow, that really saved him a lot. Anything else?
I think it's important being able to pick up on those cues, right? With clients when you meet with them, and especially if you're used to seeing them like annually or every 6 months, and then you suddenly see their health decline. Being able to bring in the family members in, right? Especially, and I think it's important creating that relationship from the beginning.
Yep.
At least so they know that we're here. But being able to pick up on those cues and being able to bring in, especially if they're, a single parent, a single female or husband where they don't have anyone else, right? Like we just met with someone a few weeks ago and we saw that and we reached out to the daughter, just making sure that, it's time for us to meet each other.
Yeah. And we asked for our client, really sharp lady, has always been really sharp, but in our review, we noticed that there was a significant decline. And what's interesting is the daughter probably is speaking to the mom, our client, every day or several times a week. And because you don't really notice the change because it's so gradual, well, it had been a full year since we'd done a review with the client. She hadn't come out to see us. She passed on the prior review and she came out to see us, and we could see that there was a decline in her ability to remember what we had just told her. So, when you're out there, we all have parents, and myself included. My mom has now been diagnosed with dementia, and we saw that decline more so. And I've told my dad, hey, Dad, it's time. It's time to invoke the power of attorney over mom. So watch out for your loved ones. That's definitely one that we're seeing a lot more because we're living longer, financial fitness. So we're fitter, which means we're living longer. But sometimes our brains don't have the same longevity. So look out for that. What other one do we have?
I would say when someone gets remarried.
Oh.
Right? Or just, married and they have to do a name change. There's a process to that too.
Yeah. Where we see that one a lot is I've got this old account and it's in my married name or in my maiden name. And I'd like to move it and have this old 401k come into my IRA that I have. Can I roll it over? And then we see this mismatch in names. And it's just it's a pain in the neck because we can't do that for the client. The client has to reach out and send them the documents to get them to retitle it in the correct name before we can move it. So that's a big one. We see that quite a bit. We don't see this one so much anymore, but it's like stock certificates that were issued in an individual's name.
I love to see those, by the way, because you don't see those often.
No, it's pretty cool, right? Some of them are really cool stock certificates. Well, when they pass away, they're really difficult to get to move into an account that could be administered by the trustees or the executors. I think I'm one of 2 or 3 people that I've ever met that knows how to do that. by the way. So if you've got stock certificates out there, or you're an advisor listening and you've run into this, reach out to us. I'll tell you how to do it. It's not horrible, but even most banks don't know how to do it. So involves an estate planning document and a special stamp. I'll give you a little clue. So those are important. And so if you're alive and you've got stock certificates, get them in a brokerage account. Do it while you're alive. It's so much easier. Do your family, do them a favor. It's going to save them a lot of hassle after you're gone. So since you brought up marriage, we did have that one case where our longtime client had all the money. And his girlfriend of 20 plus years, she didn't have a lot of Social Security. She lived in the house that he owned. They were all intents and purposes a married couple, except they didn't have the document. And what it came to be was that we realized that if something happened to the man, that the girlfriend would not receive his almost $3,000 a month in Social Security. She would only receive her $400 in Social Security. And she wouldn't automatically take ownership of the house. Or, she was a partial beneficiary on the IRA, but that was it. So I suggested that they think about marriage for, in this case, you've been together for this long for Social Security purposes, for no real other reason than that. And this was a particularly sad case because they actually booked the appointment to get married for, I think, the following Wednesday or a week from Wednesday or something. And that happened on a Friday. And over the weekend, the man had a stroke. And within a few days, he succumbed to that stroke before they got married. The outcome was that the girlfriend of 20 years did not get his Social Security. The house went into probate, and it all went to the daughter, who we had actually never heard of in our longtime relationship. So she was estranged. The IRA got split. So the lady didn't get very much at all. We honestly don't know what happened to her. I know she lost the house. She couldn't even make payments on the house using his money because she had no right to go into his bank account. So, it almost foreclosed. And an attorney got in there and prevented the foreclosure, but ultimately the house was sold. Really got to be careful with those. Oh, we don't need to get married relationships. Sometimes you do, and maybe for the wrong reasons, or you need to make sure that you've got some really good trust planning in place. So one of those two things. So that's another one.
Yeah, I think the important thing is being on top of keeping, I guess, your advisor up to speed when there's changes. And on the advisor side, making sure that you're meeting with your clients on an annual basis at least to be able to capture all those changes. Because when things happen, life happens.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you want to make those transitions as simple as possible.
Yeah. And brings me to two other things. One is I had a client who the husband liked me. The wife thought I was just, I don't know, she said I was evil, which was, it's so not who I am. And so the next thing I know, I get a call from the daughter, and the daughter's like, oh, I'm in senior social services. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Okay, good. I'm glad you're on the phone. This is what's going on. And mom was freaking out because dad had always managed the money, but dad was declining in health and he just didn't care. And so she was now left with this huge responsibility. Bottom line is we got the family involved, and now we've got great relationships with the children. The mom's happy, and I actually go visit with her and have coffee with her in her the community she now lives in, where she's safe, and we have open communication with the family. So that was kind of a cool outcome. But if there's one takeaway from this, it's IDs. as our seniors age. And we run into this so often now. And I know I'm going to run into it and with my mom. She doesn't drive anymore. So what do you need a driver's license for? I'm not going anywhere. You need an ID. Now, you can argue that, well, you can vote without one. It's getting a little political, but that's a big topic, is not being able to vote or voting without an ID. But you need one for everything else. So if we need to move an account for your loved one, even though you've got power of attorney, we need a valid ID for the person that you're signing for. So expired identification is a major issue when it comes to financial services. And it'll put a stop on whatever we're doing for somebody because they let it expire.
We can't proceed without the...
Yeah. And for those of you that have got parents that are in assisted living or a community, you got to pick them up and take them to the DMV, not for a driver's license, but for a state-issued ID. So I would say make sure that you keep current on that because it's something that we run into not just occasionally.
Yeah, which I think we've been doing a really good job as part of our annual reviews, making sure that those are up to date. Because sometimes, like you say, these clients stop driving and they don't even realize that it's about to expire.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're not traveling, why do they need a passport? If they're not driving, why do I need a driver's license? Trust me, IDs are really, really important.
Making sure accounts have beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Brokerage accounts. Retirement accounts, I think it's pretty self-explanatory because a lot of the times you can't open an account without the beneficiary.
Yep.
But say like a brokerage account that has no TOD.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want that account to go to probate.
Correct. So if you don't have a trust, so what we do quite often, if a client has come to us and they are going to get a trust, but they don't have one, if we open an after-tax account, a non-qualified, if you're listening to the prior episode, then we put the designation TOD on it so that there is a beneficiary. Once the trust comes into play, we re-register it in the name of the trust, and that makes a lot of sense. Oh, marriage. So another thing that we need to look at is we see this a lot. I've got two stories about 401ks and beneficiaries. One is about a divorce.
Oh.
So, client got married, worked at the company, listed his wife, as he should. Well, you have to, unless she signs otherwise. Long story short, gets divorced, remarries, never updated the beneficiary at the 401k, dies. Old wife is beneficiary of the 401k, new wife was not. So, revisit your beneficiaries from time to time. That's definitely a high priority one. So we had one with a client that came in. I recommended that they get a trust because they were aging, house was paid for, and what they didn't tell me about was some assets that I wasn't handling. And I recommend they get the trust. So I gave him an intake sheet because they didn't want to move forward right then. That we would then send to our attorney partners. Number of years goes by, and we get a phone call from the wife. And she goes, "Hey, what about this other company you own? We've got an elder care company now," and so she wanted to know about it. So Leslie in her office sets an appointment with her, and right on top of the documents was this trust intake form. And the reason that she was meeting is because her husband had full-blown Alzheimer's, didn't know who she was, where he was. Unfortunately, his personality was no longer there. And his care, because he needed to be in basically a lockdown facility, was about $12,000 a month. And they didn't have a lot of money. And it became quite apparent that, all you've got is your IRAs and what's in the savings account, which is only going to last you, a number of months. She goes, "Oh, but my husband has $600,000 at his 401k. Now, the wife was a beneficiary on it, but he wasn't dead. They wouldn't talk to her because she had no power of attorney over her husband. Couldn't get one because you can't sign a power of attorney after someone has already lost their mind. So the options were file for conservatorship, which would take about 6 months, and $25,000 of money that they actually didn't have. Or in this case, hope he doesn't live long. Well, unfortunately, he didn't live long. And she was able to then inherit the 401k and update beneficiaries. And yes, she did get a trust. So there was that one. Another one was an expired a very old power of attorney with no successor power of attorney. Everything was fine and dandy until mom got diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she was the one signing on behalf of dad. That was a pretty potentially sad case. It turned out the family's version of dad's really bad and the legal definition of dad's really bad were two different things. And we were able to get him in front of an attorney and prove that he was lucid enough to acknowledge and sign. And we were able to put daughter in charge. So when mom passed away, the daughter was able to do everything that needed to happen, transfer assets, sell the house. The money's invested for dad's benefit. So things you don't think about when it comes to investing. And notice none of the stuff we've talked about is the funds we picked, the investments we made, the returns that we got. None of that. All of this stuff is about what your financial advisor needs to be doing for you outside of picking some investments. Because quite frankly, there's only so many mutual funds, there's only so many stocks, and you could argue that one's slightly better than the other in any given time period. What really comes down to taking care of you, the client, is making sure that we're doing the stuff that's almost non-investment related in terms of the returns of the money, but it is definitely managing not just the money we're managing, but all of the estate assets as well. So
it's being on top of the changes and the regulations that come in place, I think, as well. Some advisors, they have the same experience for 20 years, right? That's we've seen that over the years.
I believe it was, I heard this a long time ago. It was some advisors are 20 years in the business, but they have the same single year of experience over and over and over and over again. And then there are others that have 20 different years of experience, which meaning they're growing as advisors. So we'll see that as well. And there's a difference between, funny prospect came in, you don't have many clients like me. I've already got a great financial planner. And I'm like, well, why are you here? And he said, well, I want to know about Roth conversion, required minimum distributions, and also I've got a property I want to sell and that's fully depreciated and I'm worried about taxes. And now all of those things are things a financial planner should be able to address with ease. At least in my mind. This is something we do on a regular basis. For us, it's second nature. But he already said he had a financial planner. That person was holding themselves out as a financial planner when they're not. They're an investment advisor. All they're doing is recommending, hey, let's invest in these stocks, these mutual funds, these ETFs. They're positioning the money, but they're not doing the bigger picture planning. And I think that's where I know our firm, I think, we're not unique in the world. No, there's plenty of advisors like me, but I think there's many, many more advisors that are not like me, which is the 20 repeat years of the same year versus now almost 30 years of unique experience. So hope you found this interesting. I know those stories, and we didn't mention any names to protect the innocent, but thanks for tuning in, and thanks for joining me, Mia.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Hope you found today's content interesting. By all means, like and subscribe. You can also listen to us on all the popular streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, you name it. We're on all of them. Look forward to hearing you there too. Thank you.